Yo ho ho ho, a pirate's life for me. But is it though? A life of freedom, high sea adventure, buried treasure, drinking rum, and harrowing ship-to-ship naval battles. You see, pirate movies ignore all the many ailments that seafarers suffered. We're not just talking about death by cannonball or being forced to walk the plank. So before you ditch the life of a landlubber and attempt to conquer the high seas, here are all the ways that pirates could have died during the golden age of piracy. Scurvy. One of the most common things pirates had to contend with at sea was scurvy, a debilitating illness caused by a severe absence of vitamin C in the body. A 17th century expert on scurvy called it a falling down of the soul. Why? For starters, those afflicted with scurvy suffered from blisters that turned to ulcers. Their gums rotted and turned black, and old wounds reopened. On top of that, people with scurvy also suffer from a host of internal problems, like blood leaking into their muscles. But the extra kick was that scurvy also attacked the mind. People with this ailment would have vivid dreams about succulent meals they wanted to consume. That doesn't sound so bad, right? In the case of pirates, they were waking up on a cramped ship with little food, if any, and odds are there were other people in their condition. This means they were now surrounded by hangry, being angry at being hungry, and possibly hung-over pirates with weapons everywhere. Keep in mind, a ship spending months at sea, 100 miles from shore, couldn't just stop at the local grocery store for lemons or oranges. In fact, it wasn't until 1795 when Royal Navy Surgeon James Lynn showed how a bit of citrus a day kept the scurvy at bay. Syphilis is an STD that afflicted many pirates and privateers, as well as ladies of the night at the time. On the mild end in Phase 1, those afflicted would have a rash or painless sores on the groin. If left untreated, which was very common on a pirate ship, those afflicted with syphilis would then suffer from headaches, swollen lymph nodes, weight loss, fever, hair loss, fatigue, fever, sore throat, and aching joints. So basically, syphilis changes the kind of day you were going to have. Now, consider you're at sea and have a physical job to do without the luxury of sick days. Left untreated, syphilis progresses into memory loss, blindness, nerve damage, brain damage, and the collapse of the bridge of the nose. Picture it all together, crazy, weak, and disfigured. Luckily, some pirates, like the legendary Blackbeard, had a form of treatment for syphilis aboard their ship. If a person was infected with the ailment, a ship's doctor had a syringe used to inject liquid mercury into the urethra of the afflicted. Arrgh! Today, we consider that practically stone-aged and barbaric. In 1717, however, it was modern medicine. After all, in the 1700s, safe sex really wasn't a thing. When most pirates got to port, after months at sea, half-starved and exhausted, the last thing they were concerned about was any illness they might come back with. The Flux. Along with other ailments that could potentially kill them, pirates also had to contend with an ailment known as the flux, also known as dysentery. Those suffering from it dealt with symptoms such as cramps, nausea, vomiting, bloody, watery poop. Yeah, enjoy your sandwich. Very high fever and dehydration. Extreme dehydration, to the point of dying because pirate ships had little fresh water aboard. This is why pirates were known to drink so much rum and beer. The alcohol mixed with water made it safer to drink. You know the old saying, drinking rum before 10 a.m. makes you a pirate, not an alcoholic. Typically, cases of the flux may only last 3 to 7 days. But as you can imagine, it's a very long and messy week. This ailment is so common because it's spread via bacteria. For example, if someone with dysentery uses the bathroom, doesn't wash their hands afterwards, and then touches a piece of food, boom, the bacteria spreads. Again, even under the best conditions, pirates essentially lived on top of each other. So there was basically a 0% chance that an ailment wouldn't spread. Pretty soon, the pirates would go from sailing the oceans blue to being ankle-deep in rivers of poo. The aftermath of collective poor hygiene. Too few people in this modern day and age wash their hands after using the bathroom, so it's doubtful the thought of washing one's hands entered a pirate's mind before putting their sword away. Superstitions. Pirates were known to be very superstitious, and while some of them may seem silly to us landlubbers, most of these superstitions were born out of fear for their own safety. Pirates may have been among the first to recognize the potential threat of bananas on ships. This superstition dates back to the 1700s, when many ships carrying bananas were lost or ill-fated. What else? Women were bad luck on board because they distracted the crew, which would anger the sea. However, conveniently for the male crew, naked women calmed the sea, which is why so many figureheads were topless female figures. Pirates also believed that if they spotted a shark following the ship, a crew member would soon die. Along those lines, they also believed that a manta ray would attach itself to a ship's anchor and bring the whole ship down to depths. Things weren't much better above deck, though. Pirates feared seeing a red sunrise. According to superstition, seeing that meant the day ahead would be a long and dangerous one. This was due in part to the fact that it usually meant a storm was building and would hit them at some point. Speaking of red, people with red hair were considered to be bad luck, so most ships avoided having them as either crew or passengers, unless it was a naked woman, of course. And while pirate ships are famous for their sea shanties or songs, you'd rarely hear anyone whistle. According to one pirate superstition, a pirate who whistled was challenging the very wind itself. Doing so meant the wind may retaliate by unleashing a storm upon the ship. Scabies, aka the itch, as it was more commonly known among pirates, was a maddening ordeal. If you've ever seen a pirate in pop culture who always seems to be scratching themselves, it's because they play Major League Baseball. Just kidding. Those suffering from the itch were literally itchy all the time due to bugs such as mites that would get aboard the ship and burrow themselves under the skin of pirates. Once burrowed in, the bugs would also lay eggs, and the pirate would be left with painful and itchy bumps, as well as itchy and painful rashes. As bad as that is, consider that if a pirate with unwashed hands scratched these bumps and rashes to the point where they broke the skin, that might create a whole new set of problems. For starters, an infection could set in, which, in worst-case scenarios, could cause an amputation. Worse yet, mites are tiny and reproduce quickly. Coupled with a dozen or more sailors living in close quarters, pirate ships became a variable breeding ground for the itch. If one member of the crew came aboard with it, before too long, every member of the crew would be driven to the brink of madness due to this affliction. Feasting on fish? Yeah, no. Speaking of food, you would think that with pirates spending so much time at sea, they would primarily eat fish, right? Well, no. The fact is that the very act of catching fish was slow and time-consuming. The other problem was that even if they caught fish, it was a gamble. Finned and flopping fish might also be poisonous. Mostly, there were very few ways to tell if a fish was poisonous before one ate it. To make matters worse, they could still get poisoned even if they caught a fish that wasn't considered poisonous. Wait, what? It's true. Consider this. If that non-poisonous fish ate something like plankton that is poisonous to humans, that poison remains in the fish's body. So if a pirate were to eat the fish that they thought was perfectly safe, that poison would then be passed on to the pirate who ate it. Because of that, pirates erred on the side of caution and avoided fish. If anything, they would eat meat preserved by salt or those rock-hard biscuits known as hardtack. They had the consistency of a brick, but unlike fish, they didn't go bad or poison anyone. Even more ways to die on a pirate ship. Let's say you survived the ailments, superstitions, and the actual piracy. There were still countless ways to almost die while aboard. Take for one that a fight could break out at almost any time between crew members who live in close quarters for months and basically see each other 24/7. Then you have all the accidents. It was common for a ship to lurch from one side to the other, causing someone to fall overboard, maybe hitting their head in the process. You also had the risk of men getting seriously hurt when falling off the rigging. There was also the sea, if a ship were to catch the brunt of a rogue wave. These giant waves typically happen during storms on very windy days and practically spring up out of nowhere. If one hit a ship, it would do so with almost catastrophic force. At the least, the entire crew would be put at risk of severe injury due to being tossed around. At worst, the ship could be damaged to the point of sinking. With gunpowder aboard, there was always a chance it could spark and cause an explosion. Essentially, so much of a pirate's life was solely about survival that every time they could live another day was a miracle. Conclusion: don't be a pirate. Just pretend.